strategies used to solve these problems. I will probably randomly call on people with cards, actually I'm going to, just to see, even if you got it wrong on your test, I need you to hear this. Even if you got it wrong on your test, that doesn't mean that if I call on you, like, oh no, I got it wrong, or I got nothing. Think about, why did you make a mistake? What mistake did you make? How should it be solved properly? So take like 2 minutes before we dive into this. Look at the ones you got wrong. See if you can figure out what you could have done to get them right. What your mistake was. We'll go through and identify that together. By the way, no new homework. So plan book filler outers, just no new homework, which you probably wrote down yesterday. Everyone has a test that now, right? So I'm not going to ask you what it was, but has anybody identified something on their test that they're like, oh, I should have gotten that right? You think, yeah. Isn't it interesting when you go back and you look at it with some fresh eyes? All right, let's dive in. So the first question we have is about completing the scale of the number line. We talked a lot about scaling axes, and as you get into chapter 3, we're doing more with x and y axes. When we just have a single number line, Annika, can you tell me how to figure out the gap between each of those tick marks? By the way, reminder, especially when I'm using cards, you can always phone a friend, like just use the help of somebody at your group, or pass it. You are never just expected to like 100% be able to do it. So you can always phone a friend or pass it. So do you know? Close. There is a division that we're going to have to do. So I like that you're thinking about the division, but that's not quite the division. I'm going to pass it off. Any volunteers for talking us through this? How do we figure out the gap, Francesca?
Well, each gap is posterior.
How do you know that? How do we figure that out? To figure out a gap or a jump or a scale or whatever else you want to call it. So write down on your paper, your clean sheet, not your test, but write on your clean sheet today. So for number 1, to determine a gap, a jump. Why did you stop working? Might have to switch this over in my smart software. Sometimes my computer's old and it doesn't like Microsoft Word, as funny as that is. Because Microsoft Word is like one of the oldest things there is. So you would think it would be just fine this way. So I'm going to have to clear this, but make sure you have like gap or jump or scale or something about what we're doing. To do that, I'm just going to really sloppily throw this in my smart file. So I'm just going to say jump. To figure out each jump. No last takers? What if I offer a piece of candy? And will I get help from everybody? Huh. Leah.
Well, how I figured it out, I think, well, I just sort of went through all the numbers,
Oh, that's guess and check. That'll work sometimes, but that takes too long. Divide what? How do we choose what to divide? Close. We divide the total distance we're going to travel over how many jumps we have to get there. But if I need to get from here to the door and I tell you I only have 5 jumps, I better make my jumps big enough to get there. If they're too small, I won't get there. So we take the entire distance. Guys, by the way, you will need the corrections in order to get a progressing to mastery. So if you have any issues, you want to be writing this down right now. We're doing this to benefit you. Future chapters, we won't necessarily do this like formally together. So to figure out that we take 33 minus 18, because we got to figure out that distance. We count how many jumps do we have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 jumps. We're going to divide by 5. What's 33 minus 18? 15. The 3 and the 8. That 8 to 3 jump is a 5. Divided by 5 gives me 3. Each gap is 3. Then we fill in, starting way out here at 15, fill in all the tick marks up until 39. Okay? Sorry. I'm not going to fill in the rest of them, but we need a value under each of the tick marks. Now, number 2 was a big one that got a lot of us. A lot of you probably have written on your paper, switch axes. Right? A lot of us probably have that, yes, maybe. So I'm going to grab a piece of this. Just give me just a second. Look at your number 2 and see if you understand what I mean by switch axes. A lot of you, I wrote an X above minutes and a Y above number of people. Can anyone remember when we talk about variables? We have 2 different ways that we talk about our variables, X and Y. And I'm trying to think of what hint I can give you. One like relies on the other. Right? Can anyone remember those words? When one relies on another. Yeah, Alex? We have independent variables and dependent variables. Independent things, people, robots, whatever, go ahead and do stuff on their own. I don't need my mom to make my dinner anymore, right? A lot of you are probably getting to that point where you're gaining more independence. Time, can we stop time? Can we speed it up? Can we make time be 10 right now? No. But could I grab a bunch of my friends and make the people at the stand be 10? Yeah, I can make this happen, but time is independent. Time has to be your X variable. People then has to be your Y. There's almost no situation, there might be a couple that we'll see this year, but there's almost no situation that will use time as a dependent. It is independent. You've ever heard the phrase time marches on? You can't stop time, you can't affect it, it's doing its thing, it is independent. Okay, so Y is dependent. When we make our graph then, this has to be your x-axis. A couple people decided they were going to flip their axes just by titling. You can't. X has to be horizontal, Y has to be your vertical. There were 2 ways you could have done this. I didn't realize this till a couple of you surprised me with how you graphed it. You could have made a histogram here if you wanted. You didn't need to, though. It was just asking for you to plot the points, like the scatter plot. So label, almost all of us need to remake this graph. So label your x-axis minutes and label your y-axis people. Even if you don't need to redo this, even if you got this right, it could benefit you to redo it. What does my minutes need to go up to? Patrick? 20. So I obviously can't go 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have enough space. So I could go, I don't know, 10, 20, but that's too big of a scale, right? That wouldn't make much sense. I could try 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 5, run out of space. What if I just scale by 5? My first value I care about is 5 minutes. So make the first tick mark you care about 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then 15, and then 20. Another option I had, instead of using every box, make every 2 boxes 5 minutes, just to space this out a bit more. So I go 2 boxes, 5 minutes, 2 boxes, 10 minutes, 2 boxes, 15, 2 boxes. At the very end of my x-axis on my paper, I'll have 20. The biggest thing that we have to care about here is that each jump is the same. So now each box here is 2.5. That does not mean these boxes have to jump by the same thing. Because what's the max people I need to show? What's the max people? Highest number on there? 10, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, that won't get me far enough. What about 2, 4, 6, 8? That'll work. So decide based off how big your table is, choose a scale that makes sense. Any questions on how to scale? You could have used the table that was on the paper. You could, or the graph. It was kind of small, but you could have used it. We then plot our points. Now that my axes are correct, x has to be time, y has to be whatever else. 5 minutes. What's my y value? How high do I go? 1. So I'm going to go in the middle of this box. 10 minutes. How many people? 3. 15 minutes? 2, 4, sorry. And sorry my line doesn't stay flat. That line should go straight across. Blame it on the smartboard. And 20 minutes, we go all the way up to our value of 10. Please make sure you realize both of these have to be 0. The origin point has to be 0, 0. That doesn't affect how big your jumps are, but that origin has to be 0, 0. Any questions still on this one? We had a lot of issues with our axes, a few issues with scale, not as many issues with scale. And guys, obviously, you can still definitely come see me. If you still have any questions on this and you want to talk about the test further, you can still definitely come see me. A lot of us did well on this problem on number 3, but we're going to review it really quickly anyways. Check out your paper, see if you are bold enough to volunteer to tell me how you solved 3. Esme is actually my buddy's girlfriend's name. She lives in, it's nowhere close to America. It's another country.
Canada?
No, I think it starts with Scotland. She's from Scotland. Nathan, you want to tell us how you figured this out?
I did 18 divided by 12.
Why 18 divided by 12? So, Nathan has 2 choices here. He wants to set up a rate. Now, here's the most common error I saw. 12 page, please don't write this part down. I need all eyes up here. This is wrong. Here, I'll even write it in red. It's wrong. The most common mistake I saw was, okay, 12 pages took 18 minutes, right? So now if I read 22 pages, well, I add 10 minutes. So that must take 28 minutes because I'll add 10. That doesn't make sense, right? If it took me 18 minutes to read 12, it's a lot more time than it is pages. And then I read 10 more pages and you're going to make the pages equal to minutes? Think about, does it make sense? I can't change, I mean, you could kind of, but I can't really change how fast I read. If I'm reading at the pace I'm supposed to be, it will stay the same. That's wrong. We need to set up the rate, which Patrick told us the way he did it is setting up time over, what did you put on bottom? Yeah, time over pages. We often, with our rates, want how long it takes us. Right? I want to know how long it's going to take me to do one of these things, so I know how long it will take me to do all of them. From here, Patrick filled in 18 over 12 and found, or sorry, not Pat, Nathan, what did you find out? Time per page. 1.5 minutes. Now be careful, I had some people say like 1 minute, 0.5 seconds, or I had a couple of just kind of weird things. You have to have one label. Now if you break this and make it 1 minute, 30 seconds, you can, but the 0.5 relates to the same label as the 1. The 1 and the 0.5 have to have the same label. Then, what'd you do to figure out 33 pages? Or, sorry, 22. If this is how long it takes to read one page, just multiply by 22, or however many pages you want to read. If you want to read the whole book, multiply by how many pages are in the book. So we multiply my 1.5 by 22, and our answer then becomes questions on that. We had some confusion there. We got to work it with a rate. Rate is anything that involves the word per. Time per page. Probability. Now this is one thing I love about CPM, and it is going to make you much better math students. Even if you struggled on the last one dealing with rate, probability totally switches gears. So hopefully, through the fact that CPM jumps around a bit, even if you're weak in one area right now, right, we'll grow, we'll get better. Even if you're weak right now, that doesn't mean that we can't then have a strength on something else. So how many of you maybe missed 3 but potentially got like 4 right? Or maybe vice versa. You got 4 wrong but you got 3 right, right? Your strengths vary. Multiple intelligences. So don't think all because you had a couple errors on this, it's a bad thing. Guys, I expected a lot of errors on this test. So please understand, nobody in this room should feel bad right now. We're all getting back into the swing of math. It's still like, I guess we're in October, almost November. So we're getting into the school year. Nobody should feel bad. This is feedback for growth. We need to point out our important information always. I had a student ask me this and I realized I should have announced it. You are allowed to use any of my stuff, especially during a test. Highlight the crap out of your test. It clues your brain into what's important. So if you want to right now, you can grab a highlighter if you want. What's important here, 5 blue, 6 green, 9 yellow, 3 red, and a bag. Anyone confident enough to help me with this one?
So, I did it sort of weird. I laid out 5 blue, 6 green, 1 yellow, 3 red on my paper.
Okay, so you actually drew it. How many did you end up with then together?
23. And they asked for, what is the probability this tile will not be green? And I know there are 17 in green. So I just took 17 and 23.
All right, now hold on just a second. I love everything you said. If you got this wrong, please write this down right now. The probability of an event. This is how we write it. P of whatever. So we're going to say P of not green is the first thing we talk about. Is what we want, like what we're looking for, not green in this case, in the first question they ask us, over the total of what we have. Always the total on the bottom. Probability always has to have the total on the bottom. So here for my not greens, Grant said there's 17 not greens. Right? 3 plus 6 is, 3 plus 9, 12, plus 5, 17. Out of how many total? 23. You're done. You don't even need to go anywhere else with that. Some people chose to give me the percent value or the decimal value, which is great. You didn't need to. I think this comes out to be like 52% or something like that. You want to verify that? 17 over 23. Nobody? What is it? 73. Oh yeah, my math is way off. I was thinking 34. So, sorry, if this was 33, actually let me try that so I don't look like a total fool. If it was 33, it would be 52%. I was thinking 33. But everybody makes mistakes, right? So don't trust me all the time. Same thing we do for the second part of this question. Who only answered the first part? It's okay. It's all good. So, if you only answered the first part, you should probably highlight that there's another part of the question. What is the probability the tile is yellow or red? I took 2 different ways to answer this. Some people gave me the probability of yellow and the probability of red separate. Fine. That's totally fine. How they're actually asking it, though, is what's the probability you would get either of those? So if we actually want to calculate the probability of red or yellow, we have to add them together. But I took either way that people gave it to me. So now if what I want is red or yellow, how many are there that are red or yellow? Alex? 12. What's my total now? Same as it's always been. 23. Anybody have question 5, right? That wants to do me a huge favor. Will you go get my fan out of the fan layer, the white one that's up on the tables? I'm dying there. I'm like pit sweating already, and I have new, really good deodorant. It's like clinical strength. They were like, you won't sweat for a day. And I'm like, yeah, let's try that. Lies. It's always lies. All right, move to the back. Number 5. A lot of us had some issues on number 5, which, guys, that indicates one thing to me. You really are not taking your homework as seriously as you should be. And I'm not here to like make anybody feel bad, but when we do that practice work, and especially now that I'm posting all the answers, there is no reason for you to not take the practice work seriously. You know that practice informs practice informs performance, right? You don't become LeBron James by just walking on the court at game time, right? I mean, he does that to throw the baby powder, but you don't just show up for the performance. You have to practice. So one of the reasons I wanted you guys to give yourself your grade this time, how'd you really do? Self-assess. Did you really put in enough practice for this performance? Or should you have done a little bit more work in these past couple chapters? Thank you. You're my favorite person. See me after class. We're hooking it up over here so I can benefit. Perimeter and area. Who can tell me what those things mean? I don't want answers, just what does this mean? Perimeter and area. They have special meaning. Parameter. What's up, Adam?
Perimeter is around the shape, and area is inside.
Around the shape. So you mean like around? Be more specific. What are we talking about around the shape? It's the how far you travel. What's that called? Starts with a D. It's the distance you would have to travel as we take the edge of the shape, right? Be careful saying around, because I can like put something around and it's not touching. We're on the edge of this figure. I want everybody on you can do this on your test. How long's this edge? 3. So jot somewhere a little 3. Then this edge, I'm going to start to color code some of this, is a 1. This edge is a 2. We're going to start to add all these things up. I'm going to write them down so I have all my numbers. If you're good with the numbers, you can do it as you go around the shape. That's up to you. We have another 1 edge here. I'm going to look at this whole inside section together. That's 3 edges. I don't have questions right now for how I'm figuring this out. There is no formula. There is no shortcut. There is no, you just walk around the edge of the shape, counting as you go. A lot of us made this harder than it needed to be. You were trying to apply some sort of formula or do something with a calculator. We're just walking. Now I've got another 1 right here. I've got another 2 right over here. A 1, a 3, and another 1. A 2, a 1, a 1, another 1, another 1. All the 1s are really annoying. If I look at all of my distances on each edge of the shape, only the outer edge, right? Perimeter means the outer edge. That's all of them. Biggest distance of 3. If I add them all up together, we get 28. But so many of you, and sorry, I don't have enough ink or effort right now, and I knew we were going to go over this together. On your paper, there deserves to be a dogs, cats, pizza question mark. Why do I say that? Alex? Yeah, 28 what? Well, did you have a label in this problem? No. So what do we use as a label if we don't have a label? Alex? Units. Everything needs a label. Everything needs a label. Okay, now area especially needs a label because it is not just units. When we find out our area, it will be units squared. A lot of people, like, even if you got the numbers right, a lot of people did not have labels. Area is what? Who can explain area for us? Somebody that's not Alex, Patrick, or Grant. Anybody? Like, anybody else show up for class today? Or Annika, she's been helping me. Okay.
The inside of the shape.
What do you mean the inside of the shape?
Like all the units inside.
How much space, like two-dimensional space, we take up inside. Each box is worth how much? 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I literally just count. There's no formula that will like do this for you. Now, if you really want to be visual, I could move this block over here. I could like shift some stuff around and try to make the shape nicer, or just count the squares. How many squares are in that shape? 27, which is there to confuse you. Wait a minute. The distance around is bigger than the distance in, but they're very close to each other. Is that allowed? Is that? Don't doubt yourself if you know what you did is right. They will set things up like this to be like, wait, how can area and perimeter, and sometimes they're exactly the same. Do not doubt yourself. Get the answers the way that you know how. A lot of what we practiced during the chapter was like utilizing some formula or adding large side lengths together. We've got very short side lengths that we have to work with here. So be very careful. Questions on this still? Units and units squared. Yeah, Grant.
If you didn't label it, did you get the answer wrong?
Okay, so that's where mastery comes in. If you didn't label it, did you get the answer right?
No.
So that's what it's not really about is it wrong. It's about is it all the way right. You know, like, if you spelled a word wrong, is it right? Well, no, I know what word it is, but is it right? You know what I mean? So sorry to be all like prolific on you, but it's not about is it all the way wrong. It's is it all the way right. So no, it's not totally wrong. You got the numbers right, good work, but you gotta have units or labels on your values. My table here, my calculator is very, very helpful. Biggest thing to realize, what does percent mean? Percent. Break it apart, what does it mean? I know you know, you're looking at me like you know. Per 100, out of 100. Out of 100. So wait a minute. Fraction and percent really work very well together. All I gotta do is figure out how to get my fraction over 100, and that number is my percent. So how could I get 3/5? What could I do to it to get it over 100? Multiply by 20 over 20, right? So we do it on top and bottom. So we get 60 hundredths. Hey guys, that tells me everything. My decimal then is 60 hundredths. Not 6 hundredths, but 60 hundredths. This zero is unnecessary, right? Because I could chop those zeros off and make it 6/10, but I can leave it there because when I convert to a percent, and even if you got this right, you should probably show this on your paper, it's as easy as shifting the decimal 2 places to the right, which is where a lot of you got the second part of this wrong. A lot of you got this box right here wrong. And you don't even have to do any math to do that. You can, but you don't have to. From decimal, because decimal is per 1, to get that over 100, you'd have to multiply by 100, which all it does is shift your decimal 2 places right, making this 0.4%. And a lot of people say 4%. A few people say 0.04%. It is 0.4 of a percent, so less than half of a percent. Questions on how I got this? How do I read this? because that's going to help us be able to get to percent too. How do I read that? Eleanor? Oh. Yeah, that's brain fart. Go. Thank you, Ella. 4 thousandths. So, 4 thousandths. You could leave this like this and not reduce. You don't have to reduce. You could if you wanted to, though. And you could divide the top and bottom by 4, and we get 1 over 250. Now here's the issue. To get this over 100, right, we want to get percent as per 100. I'd have to divide by 10, so we get 0.4 on top. This is a really ugly fraction. We normally don't mix decimals and fractions. That's kind of a no-no. But if I want to put it over 100, the numerator tells me my percent. The numerator over 100 is always your percent. And then this was kind of like a bonus because we haven't talked about super big percents before. If you have over 100%, do you have more than a whole or less than a whole? More than a whole. Right? If I order pizza and they deliver 250% of what I ordered, yeah. So 250%, percent over 100. Chop off the zeros, 25 over 10. Well, snap, I could just put that over here. You could have honestly left that. You could have left 250 over 100. I'm not expecting you to reduce quite yet. But if I want to reduce this, 2 1/2 or 5 halves if you like it improper, and my decimal, 2 1/2 as a decimal, 2.5. If I move my decimal to the right to go from decimal to percent, I can go the other way to go the other way. So I can move my decimal left if I choose to. Questions on this table? Yeah. The bottom one. So 250%. We know percent is out of 100, right? If somebody says you're giving 100% effort, you're giving all that you have. So if you have over 100%, you have over everything. So, like, let's say we have a container of water, right? Like, let's say I have my cup, and I start pouring water into it. When it reaches the top, it's 100% full. Now, the problem with a physical thing like a cup, as soon as I go over 100%, what's going to happen? It will overflow. Anything over 100% means you have more than one. Well, more than 1 cup of coffee, when I only have 1 cup, would be bad, right? It would be everywhere. But sometimes, when I'm talking about like money, like if I get 250% of my money back, I want more than what I put in, right? So this means it's 250 over 100, which if I think about that as a fraction, I could divide the top and bottom by 10. Like we said, stacked zeros can chop off. And that's how we get 25 over 10. It's gonna be more than 1 because it's over 100%. Does that make a little bit of sense for now? You don't have to be really good at this yet. We threw it on there to kind of see how you would do with it.
Wait, I just don't want to. What about the decimal?
This, the 2.5, because when we look at the fraction, reducing it out to a mixed, it's 2 wholes and another half. So this is 2 and 5 tenths. So this is 0.5 is a half, right? So this is 2 1/2. It's representing that. If you were running out of time, if you want to talk more, see me at AR extensions. A lot of us were fine on 9. You get a combined value of -4. If you did not, just check your work. I think you'll probably find your mistake. In 7, if you remember the rule that I taught you, you'd probably remember that 9s and 11s repeat if you have a denominator of 9 or 11. But if you could not remember that, totally fine. What can we always do with a fraction to figure it out, even if we don't have a calculator? Alex? Long divide. Numerator, denominator. Numerator goes inside. A couple people had issues with that. Numerator goes inside. So it's 4 divided by 11 And we will end up getting, just because I'm running out of time, 0.36 repeating forever. Do not trust your calculator. It is 3.6 repeating, right? I'm not crazy. Your calculator might end with a number that is different than what you think it should be. Ignore the last number. If your number takes up like the whole screen, your answer takes up like the entire screen, ignore the last number. It's going to be a trick. It might be okay, but it might be rounded. And in 8, when we start with two mixed numbers, what should we really do? Alan?
Make them improper.
Improper fractions are way better. They just really are. And who wants to be proper anyways? That's no fun. So everybody, even if you got this right, it's good practice. Everybody write 3 1/4, 6 1/8. Then we need common denominators here, right? Somebody stop me. Come on.
No.
Why?
Because we're multiplying.
We're multiplying. Multiplication with fractions is much easier. Really is. So to make this improper, use the multiply and add kind of triangle method. 3 times 4, 12 plus 1, 13 over 4, times 6 times 8, ooh, plus 1. This is gross, but you are allowed to use calculators. So go straight across the top, straight across the bottom. Do not try to plug the whole thing into your calculator. It's just too difficult. Annika, what'd you get? 637 over 32. You could have stopped there. If you wanted to reduce it or simplify it, you end up getting 19 and 29 30-seconds, which again, there's that handy dandy button on your calculator. Improper to mixed. Gravity works.
You wrote.
Sorry. Thank you. My brain is just... So sometimes I get that. Like, I also understand that sometimes we just write the wrong thing. So know that I totally understand that. I bet my brain came over here and looked at the 6 or something, and as I was writing, I just forgot what I was supposed to write. Yeah. So remember, just like what we did yesterday in number 9, now hold up. Number 9 used pair up those additive inverses. Eventually we'll want you to know that word. Here's the last thing you need to do. You need to, on the original test, decide what you think you would have earned on that. Mastery, progressing, exemplary, not progressing. And not progressing isn't like, oh man, you suck. It's like, I really need practice. Please help me. Not progressing, I kind of wish we'd change the name of it, means I'm not really learning this. I'm kind of stuck. Progressing means, yeah, I'm getting it, I'm learning it, I still need a bit of practice. Mastery is, I showed that I understand it. Not, do you understand it now? Did you show on the original test that you totally understood? My progressing mastery assignments aren't huge. They are normally easier than the original test. So please be honest with yourself. I still reserve the right to assign you the grade that I feel is appropriate. Normally, you guys are spot on when I do this with 7th grade. You guys are normally even more critical than I would be, but up by your name, please put either an NP, a P, M, or E, circle it, then put your paper that we just wrote on top, staple and stick on the top then, and then you're good to go. I got 2 staplers too, so here. One by the thing, one right here. So if you just want to grab this stapler and staple, then you can toss it. It is hot. Am I crazy or is it warm in here today? You're ripping off all your tabs. I hate that. So one trick that I learned, because I hated those tabs, before you pull it out, give it a little crease down the edge, and then it'll work a lot better. That was important, or what? told you blank. I mean, still turn that in. We'll put it back in your math journal at some point. Or just make a note in your math journal if you want. Like, what you rip it off. You need to turn it in. Show what you were doing today. Turn it in, but then on this piece of paper, write like homework 34 through 38, turn in one test. Just write me a little note so I see that. You what? Do the same thing she just did. So, leave a little note in your math journal, like homework 19 through 23 was on like that on test. I need to see what you did in class today. Yeah. Again, now is not a good time. So either stick in my event if you guys want me to get to it when I can get to it. Because I can't pull up math and stuff right now. Or if you see me an AOR extension. But if it's just done and ready, you can just take my event. Okay. What? It happens. That's life. And then you die.